back to my channel. I'm here with another astrology oracle reading for you, and it is October 17th. We are more than halfway through the month. We are slowly approaching the end of Libra season and will soon be ingressing into Scorpio season, which, despite being a Libra sun, I am very excited for because all of the month of October is my favorite month of the year, of course, right? It's my birthday month, and it was my 30th birthday this month, so it has been a very significant celebration for me. Also, you will notice that this wall behind me is empty. I have not yet hung up my Perry Rose Academy flag because I was eventing all weekend. So Friday night, I had my astrology party at the Well, and Saturday, I spent all day at Inspired Gardens setting up my booth for tarot readings and herbs and charm bag sales, and it was a fantastic day. It was a beautiful day just to be outside in the fresh air and to connect with different people. So even though this space is empty, it is, again, a reminder to me of this fantastic community that I'm building, not only online, but in person as well. So next week, I promise you will see that space filled once again with my flag, but in the meantime, this negative space, again, is being totally filled with gratitude right now. So, as I mentioned, we are nearing the end of Libra season. The sun is currently at 24 degrees, and we also have left the Scorpio rising territory. So last week was our final Scorpio rising video, at least for now. So we have moved on to Sagittarius. So this chart I am using for Dayton, Ohio at 11:11 a.m. features a 3-degree Sagittarius rising, and the moon is currently at 23 degrees at Cancer. So you will notice that I mentioned 2 cardinal signs in the big 3 of this chart, Libra and Cancer. That means that the moon and the sun are forming a square. Now, we're within 1 degree, so it is very much worth talking about here is this square between the sun and the moon, 24 and 23 degrees respectively. Now, Libra and Cancer are both cardinal signs, and I've talked about that before, but just to give you a little refresher, basically what this means is these zodiac signs are associated with the beginning of a season. Libra with fall and Cancer with summer. Now, when we have a square, we have tension, right? We have the need to really put some effort into something to get something out of it. It is an opportunity for us to not just be in conflict, whether that's with others or with ourselves, but to really be, on this mission to make something of the situation that we're going through. So when we have the sun, we are dealing with our essence, our ego identity. Now Mars also deals with ego, but for the sun, it's more about, who we are, how we identify, who we're even trying to become. Over the weekend, I heard a really fantastic comparison of the sun, or explanation of the sun, I should say. And that is that the sun is who we are trying to be, where our soul is trying to feel embodiment in this lifetime, through our sun sign placement. So the sun in Libra, again, is squaring the moon in Cancer, and the moon is right at home in Cancer. That deep feeling, that intuition, that nurturing center is really activated in this sign. But when we have 2 cardinal signs forming a square, we have 2 signs of beginnings, of change, of ushering something new in, forming a very tense conversation or very tense relationship to one another. And, really when we have these squares, it's almost like the 2 planets are seeing who can push ahead forward and be the most successful. So I would say at this time, particularly if you are someone that has Libra or Cancer in your big 3, you may be feeling the tension and pull between, who you are, who you want to become, your feelings, your emotional center, knowing what's right. Even if you don't know how to necessarily create a new path forward, this very tense conflict between what you feel and who you are, or what you want to be and what you're currently doing, could certainly be coming up at this time. Now, of course, those are not the only aspects that I think are worth mentioning this week. We are also seeing an opposition between the moon and Pluto. Another cardinal sign enters the conversation because Pluto is in Capricorn. Now, Pluto is no longer retrograde. It is at 26 degrees, and the moon again is at 23 degrees. So we're within 3 degrees. I also think that that is very much worth talking about. When we kind of get bigger orbs away from these degrees, I think that their influence, it's almost like we can see it coming, but maybe let's wait to discuss it. But with Pluto, we have been going through it with Pluto, right? Let's not forget we are in the midst of the United States Pluto return. And even if you are not in the United States, this is a global superpower that we're talking about. And we are seeing, much thanks to Uranus in Taurus, we are seeing a very significant breakdown in, established, organized systems, pushing for the future, pushing for change. Now, what that change is and why it's being brought about is different everywhere, but there is no denying that things are certainly in a very significant incubation period for change. Again, also, because we are talking about Pluto, we have to also mention that it is creating a square to the sun as well. So Pluto at 26 degrees, the sun is at 24 degrees. So just to add like another layer on top of that square between the sun and moon, there is also a square happening to the sun from Pluto. Now, if you know anything about astrology on a deeper level, you will know that when we have planets in an opposition and those same planets square a single planet, like what we're seeing here between the moon and Pluto being opposite and the moon squaring the sun and Pluto squaring the sun, this is what we call a T-square. And the sun is really the focal planet. Now, also, we do have Venus right there. Venus is at 22 degrees, so it is also almost forming an exact square to the moon, and it is also within 4 degrees of forming that square to Pluto. So actually you would consider both Venus and the sun to be the focal planets of this T-square, and it is very tense, okay? T-squares are a very long and drawn out process of dealing with them, right? Because we're not only dealing with an opposition, which is very reflective and very, tense like a square, but in a much different way. I like to kind of think of oppositions as almost like reflections of how far we've come, how far we've been. There is a lot of processing that happens when we have an opposition. There's also a lot of releasing that happens when we have an opposition. It's almost like we can have a perspective and a perception that we have not had before. And so, yeah, we are seeing very, very intense energy, between Venus, which is our values and I don't want to say our belief systems, because that also kind of falls into Jupiter territory, but it is our values, right? It is the things that we are, building our lives around, the things that influence, the way that we talk, the way that we dress, the type of things that we purchase, the type of people we spend time with. And the fact that the sun is right there forming a conjunction with Venus is very much intensifying those things, right? There's almost an essence between this conjunction of who am I and what am I doing here? Because Libra is such a relational sign. It's so much about the other and not us that, it is really easy to kind of get lost in, if you're married, following your spouse's belief systems, or if you're a part of a community, to really align yourself in those community, even if your personal ethics are being questioned. And, when we see this opposition between Pluto and the moon, we see a need for purging and for transformation. And, Capricorn, this is all about, systems of stability, control, maturing, it's a more grown-up energy, really, when we're dealing with Capricorn. And then we have Cancer, which is so nurturing and intuitive and caring. And so, we even see, in my opinion, between the religious extremism, the upcoming elections and eclipses that we're dealing with, are we actually nurturing the correct things? Or are we supporting systems that are inherently destructive and oppressive? And if we are supporting systems that are inherently destructive and oppressive, is that actually a reflection of our value system? Big question within that, going on this week. Now, we do still have a couple of the other things, that we've been seeing over the course of the last few weeks, right? Neptune in retrograde in Pisces, Saturn in retrograde in Aquarius, Mars in Gemini, which will be going retrograde in about 2 weeks. So there's a lot of retrograde energy that's out there, more that's coming towards us. And that's just, in my opinion, piling on the need for reflecting and, spending some time with ourselves to say, why am I doing these things? What is my motivation here? Is there some kind of unconscious or subconscious, Pluto and the moon, circumstance that's kind of inspiring me to act out and change? Or, are we stuck on autopilot, right? Because the sun wants us to liberate ourselves and to take up space, to fill the room with our light. And so if you're stuck on autopilot, this is just a reminder that is still a choice, right? Being on autopilot or even continuing habits and behaviors out of comfort, it's keeping you from growth. Metamorphosis has been a really big word for me this week. And with all of the cardinal energy going on in this T-square, I think it's a really great time to just really consider, where you're putting in your efforts and what is striking up feelings and emotions within you, right? So, I think a lot about Facebook and the types of statuses that people put on Facebook, because they're all very emotionally driven. Even if they're positive or they're negative, it doesn't matter. Almost all of the posts that I see on Facebook are emotionally driven. And I think investigating that a little bit and understanding, why am I doing this? Why is this my outlet? Why are these the words that I'm choosing to say, and who is this message for? So I know that is quite a significant preamble, but it's very necessary, right? Because we're not dealing with small, insignificant things here. We're dealing with Pluto, which is transformation, death, taboos, even sex, right? We're still seeing a lot of oppressive behaviors towards women for the fact that they are women, for the fact that they have vaginas and they can procreate, and there is a power dynamic over women for that reason. We're also seeing, and again, the fact that Cancer and the moon, very much motherly energy being triggered. But then we're also seeing the sun and Venus. And I love talking about Venus because I think it's so necessary to really investigate your values, because so many of us have grown up in organized religions or communities that really set the tone. They set the values for us to just simply follow along. And, really, it's time to question that. Why are you doing the things that you're doing? Why are your neighbors doing the things that they're doing? Is there something to, to figure out and to go and dig a little bit deeper? You know what I mean? I do. I think that it's really necessary right now to dig deeper and to start questioning not just others, but questioning yourself, right? Because again, Libra is such an other sign. It's so easy to follow someone else's lead or be a people pleaser. And in my opinion, it is no longer time to be people pleasing. It's time to get very real and to get very honest and to possibly get off of the internet for a minute, pick up some books, read some articles, start to find something of substance and not just emotional outpour, right? So again, I know that was a bit of a long preamble, but it felt necessary today. So thank you for sticking with me if you did through that little spiel I just had there. Okay, we are again down to a very thin set of cards, and to me that says whatever continues to come up at this time, it's very important for us to discuss and to get into. So let's see what the cards have for us today. The earth element of stability. It's almost ironic that stability is the mantra for the card that we're discussing after that whole rant that I just had, because I think one of the big reasons why this is so heavily on my mind is to do with stability, right? Because the actions that so many people take and the directions that so many people follow, they do so because they believe they're getting a sense of stability. And I do have to question and wonder, is it actually stability if it's unstable or unstable, right? For someone else, is your comforts, is your value system, is your belief system, are those held up for the sake of you being comfortable and for having some sort of I want to get away from just saying stable, but just feeling a sense of security. And does that security come at the cost of somebody else? Does that security and stability come at the risk of somebody else's comfort and stability? Before I even get into it, I think that's really interesting and important to mention. So my ring light is bouncing off the card, but earth element. So we are dealing with Virgo, Taurus, Capricorn. And, if I look at the current chart, we actually, in this particular chart for 11:11 a.m. in Dayton, Ohio, we do have Virgo ruling the midheaven of this chart, which the midheaven is essentially other people's perception, other people's, so when I say the rising sign is how you look out of your eyes and see the world, the midheaven is really what's looking back. And what's looking back in this chart is Virgo. We also have 2 planets in Taurus, Uranus and the North Node, which have been causing a lot of ruckus and chaos over the last few months, few years, and still yet to come. Uranus has been very destabilizing in Taurus's space, whether we think about the pandemic or before then, and what's expected, just next year, food insecurities, which is Uranus and Taurus to a T, have been very problematic for a lot of people. I was even, grocery shopping just yesterday and just seeing how much more everything has gone up in price in the last 2 weeks. I mean, it's hitting me to a point where I can feel all the other shoppers' anxiety, right? I'm out and I'm picking between the cheapest of packs of chocolate chip cookies for my kids' lunch, and I can see people who are really reeling with, even the kinds of dog foods and cat foods they can buy, right? It's man, can I really afford $14 kitty litter right now? Well, guess what? We don't have a choice. The cat needs kitty litter, and it's a very demoralizing situation to be in. Now, obviously, these kinds of circumstances and issues don't exactly exist for those who are in the upper echelon and who are wealthy. But as I mentioned before, right, is our sense of safety and security and stability, is that coming in response to or in concurrence with someone else's instability and insecurity? And in a country like America, we cannot ignore the answer to that question. We cannot pretend this is a surprise, right? We cannot pretend we don't know why things are the way that they are. Billionaires are running our country, and those are not the people that are in the grocery store, putting down a pack of cheese because it's too expensive. We also, again, have Pluto in Capricorn, and the Pluto return of the United States, which has been going on all year. It's completely transformative. We are slowly approaching eclipse season as well, where we will be seeing some very interesting things happening, right? On November 8th, we have an eclipse, and guess what that day is? Oh, no big deal, just election day. Okay. And in this particular chart, we have Taurus ruling the 6th house of daily routines, and we have Capricorn ruling the 2nd house of stability. And I think that what you could probably gather from this, video so far is that there is instability, there is insecurity everywhere. And just because it's not pretty to look at and it's not kind to deal with, or because the systems that you invest in and have worked yourself into for some sense of security and stability, we do have to take a long, hard look and say, is this affecting someone else? Is this contributing to a negative experience elsewhere, right? Again, that Libra, Venus, and Sun, it's what am I doing and how does that affect other people? So the earth elements, we do have, as always, all modalities. We have fixed, we have mutable, we have cardinal, And, you know, the earth elements of the zodiac, they really come through and they kind of ground everything. And what I think is really interesting is that when you look at the planets that are opposite to one another in the zodiac. So, for example, Capricorn, the opposite to that is Cancer. And when we think about Capricorn, you know, and I've talked about Capricorn in the past, you know, being this sort of, let me build the foundation for you, and Cancer kind of being like, well, then I'll make sure everything else is well cared for, that, you know, the kids are taken care of and the pets are fed, right? And then we have Gemini, or I apologize, then we have Pisces and we have Virgo. So we have this ethereal, you know, magical, dreamy Pisces, and then we have Virgo, who's like, what's real, right? Like, what's tangibly, understandably, factually relevant and evidential, you know, very practical sign Virgo is. And then we have Taurus and we have Scorpio. You know, we have the deep, dark depths with Scorpio, where it's just like, let's just keep digging and go down and go down. And then we have Taurus, which was like, well, don't forget to come up and, you know, experience life, right? Taurus is like one of the most sensory of all the zodiac signs. And it is a reminder that we are, yes, we're spiritual beings and we're here to have a human experience. And that means having a human experience, right? So let me pull from my handy dandy book, as always, to give you a little more insight into the earth element. The quote for this is from Thomas Merton from the New Seeds of Contemplation. Every moment and every event of every man's life on earth plants something in his soul. All right, let's get into it. Now is the time to draw upon your strength. Think of yourself as solid and sure as a rooted tree. You are firm. Nothing can knock you out of your spot. Earth is the element of the signs Taurus, Virgo, and Capricorn. These are the signs that keep us centered, but more aptly fastened to the ground. Our spirits become stable. Our souls deepen under the influence of the earth. The earth elements remind us that we're engaged in the five senses. Our dreams become manifest in what is real, not what is imagined. Earth is the element of practicality and wisdom. Earth signs are about what is real, what can be proven, and what is solid in our lives. They have to do with certainty, what can be seen and felt, rather than what can be imagined or dreamed. Earth tells us to take our time. There doesn't need to be a rush. We can achieve what we want while going through methodical steps. It all depends on how determined and measured we are, how strong and self-assured. The earth element card is about finding meaning in the physical world, living free among nature, being an animal, and also being human. The warning here is to not become too stubborn and allow others to be who they are. It's not a time for criticism. When this card comes up in a reading, it can indicate that matters are becoming rock solid and sure, or it could mean that you have to prove yourself in a tangible way. The earth element is about being practical and landing on your feet. You want to look out for stubbornness either in yourself or in others. This can indicate being fixed in views and not being willing to try something new. It may feel at this time that you want to dig your heels deeper and not change your ways. However, action is needed. It is time to stop plotting and let go of your fears. This card is about building blocks, building a home, building a foundation for your life, finding a master plan and what works for you. This card is also a solidifier for any reading that you're working on. So that sort of means that if I had an entire spread, this card would just be confirmation. And so for me, in this reading I'm doing for you right now, this is confirmation of my entire preamble, you know. And again, when we're dealing with values and belief systems and things of that nature, those are very intangible things, right? They're concepts, they're ideas, they're, you know, rules even at sometimes, right? But they're all of the mind. And I think that this is just a really good reminder that things can be really great in theory. They can sound fantastic on paper, but in practice, where physical evidence and evidential evidence, right, you can see it, see how things are happening and how people are being affected. That is information to not be ignored, right? And, you know, not to continue to harp on religion and politics, but, you know, these are very conceptually based things, right? Religion is based on a concept. Politics are based on a concept, and they can be very idealistic, and they can, make a lot of sense on paper, but when you start to see the way that people are struggling, or the way that people are mistreated, or the way that people are not given rights based on those ideals and concepts, it doesn't work. It's not working. Again, the big thing I think to think about this week is your sense of security and stability at the cost of somebody else's? And if the answer to that question in some capacity is yes, what are you going to do about it? All right. So, my dears, that is all I have for you this week. Thank you so much for showing up and being here with me. It means so much to me. And I will be back again next week. We're getting closer and closer to the eclipse, so wonder what card's going to come up for us then. Okay, I'll talk to you soon. Bye.